I'm going on a round-the-world trip with Leo. The text from Chloe popped up while I was working late. What the hell does that mean? I typed back. Her reply was fast. Consider this your punishment for losing your temper the other day. You need to do some serious self-reflection. I stared at the screen and let out a short, humorless laugh. Are you using our joint savings to take him overseas? He's like a brother to me, Ethan. He's not a stranger. I've been hearing that line for 3 years. I didn't text her back. Instead, I called my lawyer. I need you to draw up divorce papers. He sounded surprised. Does your wife agree? She's at the airport. After hanging up, I noticed my hand wasn't shaking at all. Chloe was my wife. Leo was the kid she called her brother, the one she always protected. And me? In this marriage, I was the one who always had to back down. She thought this time would be the same. She had no idea I wasn't planning on waiting for her to come home. 01 Chloe's message arrived at 1 in the morning. My phone buzzed on the desk. I had just closed a file I was working on, and before I could even set it aside, I saw her breezy, dismissive words. Leo and I are getting away for a bit. A trip around the world. Think of it as a penalty for your little outburst the other day. Take the time to think about where you went wrong. She even attached a picture of an airport departure gate. She didn't ask if I was okay with it, didn't explain the itinerary, and didn't say a single word about arrangements for the house. It was a directive, like one she'd give a subordinate at work. I stared at the text for a few seconds, the corner of my mouth twitching into a smile that was both faint and ice cold. Chloe is my wife. We've been married for 3 years. She's a manager at an import-export company, a strong woman who's always sure she's right. Before we got married, she told me she didn't like being tied down. Back then, I thought that was a sign of independence. Only now did I realize it was just her habit of putting everyone else's feelings second to her own. Leo was the brother she never had. 24 years old, no real job, a sweet talker who knew exactly how to play the victim. Chloe always said he'd had a rough life and that I needed to be more patient with him. At first, I didn't think much of it. I gave him money on holidays, helped him look for jobs, and treated him like family. Until a few days ago, I came home late from work, pushed open the door, and saw Leo sitting on our couch in my bathrobe, eating a bowl of fruit. Chloe was sitting next to him, gently helping him map out his future. I stood in the doorway, and neither of them noticed me at first. In that instant, I had no idea who I was supposed to be in that scene. I finally spoke, my voice quiet. What are you doing here? Leo looked up, startled, before defaulting to his usual harmless expression. Hey man, don't get the wrong idea. I just took a shower and got my clothes wet. Chloe's brow furrowed. Her eyes filled with impatience as she looked at me. She said I was overthinking it, that I was being petty, that I was too hard on Leo. Her words got sharper and sharper. I lost my temper. I grabbed Leo's arm and shoved him toward the door, telling him to get out. That one shove. Chloe jumped in front of him, shielding him without a moment's hesitation. She looked at me, her eyes as cold as if I were a complete stranger. Ethan, are you out of your mind? I can still hear those words perfectly. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, taking Leo with her. The house was dead silent all night, so quiet I could hear the sound of my own breathing. I thought she'd at least need a few days to cool off. I never imagined she'd choose this. A trip around the world. To punish me. I put my phone down on the desk without replying. It wasn't that I didn't know what to say. It was the sudden, crushing realization that there was no point in saying anything at all. I'd spent the last 3 years doing all the explaining. I'm a project lead at a private firm. I make good money, but my time is never my own. For her, I'd turned down after-work drinks with clients and rearranged my whole schedule. She said she hated the smell of smoke, so I quit. She didn't want to live with my parents, so I bought the condo we're in now without a second thought. She said Leo needed looking after, and I agreed. She told me to be the bigger person and let things slide, and I did. But when you make a habit of backing down, the other person forgets where you were originally standing. All they see is you in retreat. I sat in my home office in the dark. The city's neon glow filtered through the window, casting a cold light on my desk. My phone screen was still on her message. I reached out and swiped the chat window away. Then I opened my contacts and found my lawyer's name. He was a college friend who specialized in family law. We caught up a few months ago, and he'd told me to call if I ever needed anything. I typed quickly, without pausing. I need you to start drawing up the divorce papers. As soon as possible. The moment I hit send, a strange calm settled over me. No anger, no regret. It felt like a massive weight that had been sitting on my chest was finally, carefully, being lifted. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Chloe's last words echoed in my head. Think about where you went wrong. I had. From the moment she stood in front of Leo to protect him from me, I understood. In this marriage, I was perpetually cast in the role of the one who needed to reflect on his mistakes. Not a partner, a student to be disciplined. I opened my eyes and looked out at the empty apartment. The living room lights were off. Her jacket was still tossed over the arm of the sofa. In the kitchen, the coffee she hadn't finished that morning was now cold. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. But I knew some things could never go back. My phone lit up again. Another message from Chloe, this time a voice note. I didn't play it. I just flipped the phone face down on the desk, stood up, and walked to the window. The night was deep. A cool breeze seeped in through the cracked open window. And I knew with absolute certainty, this wasn't a fight. This wasn't one of those times where she expected me to wait around until she was ready to forgive me. This time, I had no intention of ever looking back. 02 My lawyer called the next morning. His voice was calm, professional. He asked just one question. Are you sure you want to proceed with legal action? I'm sure, I said. No extra explanation, no emotional wavering. He paused for a beat, then told me to gather our marriage certificate, property deeds, and bank statements. He said it was best to handle everything in one go to avoid a drawn-out battle. After we hung up, I started going through the file cabinet. Our marriage certificate was in a drawer at the very bottom, its cover slightly worn. Chloe had picked it out, saying the red was festive. I placed it in a manila envelope, my movements steady as if I were handling any other official document. That afternoon, my lawyer sent over the draft of the divorce petition. It was direct and factual, stripped of any emotional language. It simply listed the duration of the marriage, the history of our conflicts, and a breakdown of our assets. I read it over and made only one change. I moved the line. The marriage is broken down irretrievably with no possibility of reconciliation up to the very top of the section. For some reason, seeing it there felt right. The court accepted the filing 3 days later. My lawyer informed me that Chloe had been served. I expected a phone call from her, but there was nothing. That night, I got home from work to an empty house. In the entryway closet, the heels she always wore were gone, but the pair of sneakers Leo had left behind were still there. I glanced at them, but didn't touch them. The next morning, I put the sneakers in a bag and left them at the front desk for the concierge to deal with. Around noon, a message from Chloe finally came through. Not a call, just a text. Are you done with this tantrum? I read the words and didn't reply. Half an hour later, another one came. I'm out of the country. We'll talk when I get back. Don't make this ugly. Her tone was the same as always, like she was managing a difficult project. I scrolled up in our chat history and reread the alert my lawyer had sent. The date for the first mediation session was set. My lawyer had warned me, if she doesn't show, the proceedings will continue without her. You need to be prepared for that. I know, I told him. That afternoon, I went to the courthouse. The hallways were long and sterile, and my footsteps echoed loudly on the polished floor. A few other couples were sitting in the waiting area. Some were arguing in hushed, angry tones. Others sat with their backs to each other in stony silence. I was alone. When my name was called, I stood up and handed over my ID. The mediation room was quiet. The chair across from me was empty. The clerk glanced up at me, confirmed my information, and went back to her notes. The respondent is not present, she said flatly. She submitted a written statement. I nodded. She pushed the document across the table to me. It was short. It said she did not consent to the divorce at this time, stating that there was still room for communication and that she hoped to resolve the matter in person upon her return to the country. I finished reading and placed the paper back on the table. Let's proceed, I said. The clerk didn't ask any more questions. Leaving the room, I paused in the hallway for a moment. The sun was bright outside, casting a glare on the floor tiles that made me squint. I suddenly remembered our wedding day. The weather had been just like this. Chloe, in a white dress, stood beside me, her expression confident, as if she had everything under control. She had said to me then, Ethan, after we get married, let's not be one of those couples that's always fighting. If there's a problem, we'll talk it out rationally. I had nodded in agreement. Looking back now, I realize her definition of rationally only ever included her own reasoning. A few days later, my lawyer asked me to come to his office to discuss the next steps. Flipping through the file, he told me Chloe's strategy was clear: delay. She probably thinks you're just throwing a fit, he said. That once she's back, you'll drop the whole thing. I didn't respond. He closed the file and looked at me. If you're determined to see this through, it won't take much longer. Stick to the plan, I said. On the way back, I got a call from Chloe. It was noisy on her end, like she was in a shopping mall. What exactly are you trying to do? She demanded without any preamble. The second I'm gone, you drag this into court? Do you think that's appropriate? I leaned against my car, my voice even. The process has already started. Couldn't you have just waited for me? Her voice was tight with frustration. It's not like I'm never coming back. I watched the pedestrians pass by on the sidewalk. After a moment, I said, when have you ever put me in a position that was worth waiting for? There was a brief silence on her end. Then her voice turned cold. Ethan, are you trying to settle scores with me now? No, then what is this? I didn't bother explaining further. My silence seemed to provoke her. Her words came faster. I've already had my lawyer file a response. Stop making trouble for yourself. We'll talk face to face when I get back. There's no need. She sucked in a breath, like she was about to explode, but was holding it back. Don't forget, she said, her voice low and threatening. We're not divorced yet. I hung up. For the next week, she didn't contact me again. But the court proceedings moved quickly. The date for the second hearing was set, another weekday. My lawyer told me that if she was a no-show again, the judge could issue a default judgment. That day, I arrived on time. The door to the hearing room opened. The chair across from me was still empty. The clerk confirmed the details and stated that Chloe had only submitted a request for a continuance. The reason was the same as before. I sat there and listened, feeling nothing. The judge looked at me. Is your position on this matter firm? It is. No room for reconciliation? None. The hearing was over in less than 10 minutes. As I was walking out of the courthouse, I received a voice message from Chloe. She sounded frantic. What do you mean? I told you I'd deal with this when I got back. Do you have to burn everything to the ground? I stood on the courthouse steps, listened to the message, and didn't reply. That afternoon, my lawyer called. The judgment was in. Divorce granted. The division of assets would be executed according to the settlement agreement. I was in a conference room at work when I took the call. Sunlight reflected off the glass facade of the building across the street, creating a blinding glare on the table. After hanging up, I sat there for a minute. A colleague knocked and poked his head in, asking how the prep for the presentation was going. I snapped back to reality. It's done, I said. After work, I went straight to my lawyer's office. There were final documents to sign. The divorce decree sat on the table. It was a thin stack of papers, but it felt heavy enough to press the table flat. I picked up the pen and signed my name. My hand was steady. The lawyer collected the documents. Her side has been notified, he said. I nodded. By the time I left his office, it was already dark. The streetlights flickered on, one by one, illuminating the endless flow of traffic. I was waiting at a crosswalk when my phone vibrated. It was a text from Chloe. Just one sentence. You'll regret this when I get back. I read it, then put my phone back in my pocket. The light turned green, and I moved forward with the crowd. She wasn't there the day I signed the papers. But from that moment on, I knew with absolute certainty that our marriage was over. 03 by the time I left my lawyer's office, the city was dark. Streetlights cast long, fragmented shadows on the sidewalk. I walked for a while without a destination in mind. My place wasn't far, but I had no desire to go back. After the decree, the condo was officially in my name alone. But whenever I walked through the door, my mind would automatically catalog the decor, which things she had picked out, which things we had added later. The mental inventory felt pointless. I stopped at the curb, got into my car, and shut the door. The world outside went silent. My phone was on the center console, its screen dark. I stared at it for a second before picking it up. There was a name in my contacts I hadn't touched in years. Maya Reed. We'd known each other since we were kids. We lived in the same neighborhood, went to the same elementary school. Then my family moved, she went to college overseas, and we lost touch. We saw each other once when she was back in the States years ago, but nothing came of it. She worked in finance, always traveling, and was the complete opposite of Chloe. Chloe needed to be in control of every situation. Maya had always been brutally, refreshingly direct. I selected her name, paused, then hit call. She answered faster than I expected. Ethan. Her voice hadn't changed, crisp and clear, with no background noise. It's me, I said, my throat a little dry. Calling me this late. Something up. Her tone was casual, skipping the awkward small talk. I leaned back against the headrest and watched the streetlights streak across my windshield. I tried to keep my voice steady. I got divorced. There was a 2-second pause. Is it finalized? Signed the papers today. She didn't respond right away. I thought she might ask why, or maybe just go quiet. Instead, she just asked, where are you right now? On the side of the road. Did you go home yet? Not yet. She seemed to be thinking. Have you eaten? The question caught me off guard. No, go get something to eat, she said, her voice even. Some things are better discussed on a full stomach. I agreed. She didn't hang up, and she didn't rush me. I started the car and found a diner that was still open. While I ordered, I left my phone on the table and could faintly hear the sound of her shuffling papers in the background. Only when my food arrived did she speak again. Okay, talk. I put down my fork, trying to find the right words. I wanted to ask you something. Go ahead. If I wanted to start over, is it too late? The question came out lighter than I expected, more like a statement of fact than a plea. The silence on her end was longer this time. I didn't push. After a moment, I heard her let out a short laugh. Well, Ethan, you don't waste any time. I don't want to beat around the bush. That sounds like you, she said. In that case, I'll be direct too. I waited. Okay. When she said that one word, I instinctively looked up. The diner lights were bright, bleaching the tabletop white. But on one condition, she continued. Name it. This time, I don't step aside, she said. Her tone was light, but the message was unmistakable. Not for anyone. I didn't answer right away. She wasn't in a hurry. You don't have to answer now, she said. I'm flying back tomorrow. That made me sit up straight. Tomorrow? I was already scheduled to come back. Just move the flight up a few hours, she said, then added, good timing. I loosened my grip on my fork. Don't overthink it, she added. I'm coming back for my own reasons, not because you got divorced. I know. Good. Just before she hung up, she seemed to remember something. One more thing. What? You're single, right? Legally. Yes. Perfect, she said, her voice cheerful. I don't do messy. The call ended. As the screen went dark, I realized my shoulders had been relaxed the entire time. The feeling was unfamiliar. It wasn't the release of tension after a stressful event. It was the absence of pressure from the very beginning. I finished my meal, paid the bill, and left. It was almost midnight by the time I got home. The living room lights were on, softer than the harsh overheads. I took off my shoes, hung up my coat, and didn't let my eyes linger on what was hers and what was mine. My phone buzzed on a coffee table. A text from Chloe. Answer my calls. I glanced at it and didn't reply. A moment later, she called. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. The phone fell silent again. I poured a glass of water and stood on the balcony. The night air was cool. I suddenly realized that during my entire conversation with Maya, I hadn't mentioned Chloe or my marriage once. And Maya hadn't asked. It was as if we both implicitly understood that chapter was closed. The next morning, the doorbell woke me up. I checked the time. Barely 7. It was a delivery. I signed for it and brought the box inside. Inside was a wristwatch and a small note. The handwriting was familiar. Flight got moved up, so the original plan is shot. Let's talk when I see you. There was no signature. I put the note back in the box and closed the lid. Just as I sat down, my phone rang again. This time, it was my lawyer. He said Chloe's legal team had contacted him, their tone unpleasant, asking if there was any room for negotiation. I gave him a simple answer: execute the judgment. After hanging up, I showered, got dressed, and left for the office. It was business as usual. Meetings, client calls, project updates. At lunch, a colleague mentioned I seemed to be in a good mood lately. I just nodded, not offering any details. In the afternoon, I got a text from Maya. Landed. That was it. I texted back, good. Nothing more needed to be said. When I left work that evening, I drove to the airport. I had already checked her flight details, but the arrivals hall was still packed with people. I leaned against my car, scanning the crowd. I saw her almost immediately. She was pulling a rolling suitcase, dressed in simple, comfortable clothes, her hair in a high ponytail. She walked with a quick, determined stride, just like I remembered. She spotted me and gave a small wave. Ethan. She walked up and looked me over. You look okay. You too. She smiled and pushed her suitcase toward me. Let's go. I am starving. I took the bag and put it in the trunk. On the drive, she talked about her trip and her work schedule. I listened, responding here and there. The atmosphere in the car was easy. No awkward silences, no careful probing. At the restaurant, she pushed the menu toward me. You order. You do it. She didn't argue. After she ordered, she looked up at me. So, that other business. Is it all cleaned up? Completely. Good, she said. I don't like things that are half finished. I nodded. The food arrived. We ate quietly but efficiently. The comfortable silence made me realize something. Some relationships don't need constant reassurance. Just sitting across from her was the answer. She put down her fork and checked her watch. I have to be at the office tomorrow. I'll drive you. Okay. She agreed so naturally, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. In that moment, I knew that phone call hadn't been an impulse. It was me, finally standing at a starting line where I didn't have to explain myself. 04 Maya's life back in Chicago was fast-paced. The next morning, I drove her to her office downtown. Her schedule was packed, one meeting after another, but she moved with a calm efficiency. Before getting out of the car, she slung her bag over her shoulder and looked at me. Dinner tonight? What time are you done? Depends. I'll call you when I'm wrapping up. She shut the door and walked toward the high-rise, her stride confident, without a backward glance. I sat in the car for a moment, watching her disappear inside, and realized how different this felt. This wasn't the draining busyness of being needed. It was the quiet confidence of being partners. I went to my own office, and the day proceeded as usual. Project meetings, client calls, nothing missed a beat. Around noon, a text from her came through. Don't wait for me for lunch. I replied, okay. No feeling of disappointment, no second-guessing. There was a liberating simplicity to it. Her call came a little after 7 that evening. Done. Send me the address. You're picking me up? Yeah. I heard her laugh softly on the other end. She didn't object. While I pulled up to her building, she was already waiting by the entrance. A few colleagues waved goodbye, and she responded with an easy smile. She walked over, opened the passenger door, and slid in as if she'd been doing it for years. What are you in the mood for? I asked. Whatever you want. Then let's go to that little Italian place in Old Town. I remember the restaurant. She'd always loved their spicy arrabbiata. Halfway through dinner, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then silenced it without answering. Work? I asked. No, she said, taking a bite of pasta. Unimportant. I didn't press. That was Maya. She compartmentalized. After dinner, instead of heading back right away, she suggested we walk. The evening air was mild, the streets quiet. She walked beside me, her pace unhurried. She paused in front of Flower Shop, looking at the display for a few seconds. You like them? They're nice. I went in, bought a bouquet of lilies, and handed them to her. She took them, a little surprised, then smiled. Ethan Vance. Look at you, being proactive. I wasn't before. Before, you were always waiting for someone to tell you what they liked. She held the flowers and didn't elaborate. We walked for another block before she said she was tired. I drove her back to her hotel. At the elevator, she stopped and looked at me. Tonight was nice. Good. I have a dinner meeting tomorrow. Might run late. Want me to wait up? We'll see, she said casually. Don't feel obligated. I nodded. She swiped her key card, and just before the elevator doors closed, she gave me a small wave. Back in my car, I realized my face was relaxed. My mouth settled into a natural smile. Over the next few days, our routine fell into a comfortable rhythm. When she was busy, I gave her space. When she had free time, she'd call. Sometimes she would be waiting for me outside my office building. Other times, she'd ask me to pick her up. She never tested me, and she never asked about my past. But people at my work started to notice. After we closed a big project, a few of us from the team went out for drinks. Maya showed up, looking for me. She walked into the bar, scanned the room, and her eyes locked on mine. All wrapped up. Just finished. She walked over and rested a hand on my shoulder. In that case, I'm stealing him. Her tone was calm, but left no room for negotiation. My colleagues looked a little surprised, then smiled and nodded. Night, boss's wife. One of them joked. She didn't confirm or deny it. just led me out of the bar. Once we were outside, she glanced at me. You mind? Not at all. Good, she said. I don't like ambiguity. She said it quietly, but the meaning was crystal clear. I realized then that Chloe would never have done that. Chloe cared about appearances, about propriety, about what other people thought. Maya only cared about her place. And if she was going to stand somewhere, she was going to make it known. That weekend, she suggested moving out of the hotel. It's getting old. My place. She nodded, not hesitating. She didn't have much with her, just 2 suitcases. When she walked into my condo, she looked around without offering any critique. Good light. If there's anything you don't like, we can change it. No need, she said, setting down her bag. We'll get to it. She wasn't uncomfortable here. That, more than anything, made me relax. That evening, I was cooking dinner when she came and leaned against the kitchen doorway, watching me. Did you used to do this? Sometimes. You seem to know what you're doing. Practice makes perfect. She smiled, letting it go. After dinner, she took a call from a partner overseas. She slipped into fluent, rapid-fire English, her expression focused. I cleaned up the kitchen, and when I was done, she was still on the balcony, talking. The lamplight framed her silhouette, making it sharp and clear. In that moment, the scene felt incredibly peaceful. When she finished her call, she came back inside and put her phone down. Was I being too loud? Not all. She sank onto the sofa and stretched. Will you come to the grocery store with me tomorrow? Of course. She looked at me and said suddenly, Ethan, yeah, I'm a blunt person. I don't sugarcoat things. I know. If you ever have second thoughts, just tell me. Straight up. I met her gaze and didn't answer immediately. She wasn't fazed. I won't be strung along. Neither will I. She nodded, as if a silent agreement had been made. That night, we slept in separate rooms. There was no pressure to rush things. The next day at the grocery store, she pushed the cart with a clear sense of purpose. When it came to household items, she asked for my input directly. This one okay? Yeah. Then we'll get it. Simple. Efficient. At the checkout, she pulled out her car, but I stopped her. I've got it. She looked at me for a second, then shrugged and put her cart away. Okay. On the way home, she walked half a step ahead of me, carrying one of the bags. The afternoon sun cast our shadows on the sidewalk, making them merge into one. I suddenly realized that this partnership felt balanced. No one was pulling ahead, and no one was falling behind. That evening, a call came in on my phone. The caller ID said Chloe. My hand froze for a second. Maya noticed. The ex. Yeah. She pushed the phone back toward me. Answer it. Her voice was perfectly level, without a trace of emotion. I picked up the phone. Chloe's voice was sharp with irritation. What have you been so busy with? You don't even answer your phone. What is it? Why are you using that tone with me? I didn't answer. She paused, clearly trying to rein in her temper. We need to talk when I get back. There's nothing to talk about. What's that supposed to mean? Exactly what it sounds like. I could hear her breathing get heavier. Is there someone else with you? I didn't deny it. Chloe, we're divorced. The other end of the line went dead silent. A few seconds later, she let out a cold, bitter laugh. Well, you move on fast. I hung up the phone. Maya had been sitting there the whole time, not saying a word. When I put the phone down, she finally spoke. Andal, yeah, good. She stood up and went to the kitchen to get some water. Some relationships, when they're over, need to stay over, she said, her back to me. Otherwise, they just poison the new one. I looked at her, standing there in my kitchen, and nodded. At that moment, I knew. Starting over wasn't about pushing forward with all my might. It was about finally not having to look back. 05, I heard Chloe was back in the country from a random comment during a project meeting. Halfway through the presentation, a colleague took a call and whispered something about the airport traffic being a nightmare. I didn't pay it any mind until after the meeting, when he added that his friend had just gotten back from Europe and was complaining about all the luggage. A name flashed through my mind, but it was gone as quickly as it came. I hadn't bothered to keep track of her schedule for a long time. That afternoon, I left work to pick up Maya as planned. She had been spending more time stateside recently, but her pace hadn't slowed. After getting into the car, she closed her laptop and leaned her head back for a moment. I have a dinner thing tonight, she said. It's casual. Want to come? Who with? A business partner and a few friends. Is it okay for me to be there? You'll be standing next to me, she said simply. That makes it okay. I nodded. The dinner was at a quiet restaurant downtown. A few people were already seated in the private room, and they stood to greet Maya when she walked in. She introduced me. "This is Ethan." No title, no elaborate explanation. But the way she said it was explanation enough. Most of the conversation was about business, punctuated by a few jokes. Maya was poised and in control, saying little but guiding the flow of the evening. At one point, she stepped out to take a call. I got up to use the restroom, and on my way back, I passed through the main lobby. And that's when I saw her. Chloe. She was standing near the host stand, dressed in a stylish trench coat, her makeup flawless, a suitcase at her feet. Leo stood beside her, looking down at his phone. She seemed to be arguing with the host, a slight frown on her face, her tone sharp. It was the first time I'd seen her since the divorce. For a brief second, from across the room, our eyes met. She froze. It wasn't the polite surprise of a chance encounter. It was the deer in the headlights shock of something completely unexpected. I didn't walk over her. I didn't look away. I just held her gaze for a second, then turned and walked back to the private room. Maya was already back in her seat. She looked at me, seeming to sense something. Run into someone? You could say that. She didn't ask for details. After dinner, we went downstairs together. We had just reached the lobby when Chloe's voice cut through the air from behind us. "Ethan." I stopped and turned around. She walked quickly, closing the distance in a few short steps. Leo trailed behind her, looking uneasy. "What are you doing here?" Her eyes darted between me and Maya, her voice tight with a barely suppressed emotion. "Dinner," I said plainly. Maya stood at my side, not flinching, not speaking. Chloe's gaze landed on her and stayed there for a few seconds. "Are you too?" "This is my wife," I said. The air in the lobby seemed to solidify. Chloe's face changed completely. "What did you say?" "I'm remarried," I said, my voice calm. "Is there a problem?" She looked at me as if she hadn't heard correctly, or as if she refused to believe it. "You just got divorced. The timing works." Her breathing grew shallow. Her eyes shot back to my face, searching for any sign that I was joking. She found none. "Are you doing this to spite me?" she asked, her voice low. "Are you trying to hurt me?" I didn't answer her question, but Maya spoke up. "And you are?" she asked, her tone level. Chloe turned to face her. "Chloe Sullivan." Maya gave a slight nod. "Maya Reed." She said nothing more, but she linked her arm through mine. The gesture was light, but its message was a freight train. Chloe's expression turned to ice. "Ethan, don't take this too far," she hissed. "Things between us are not finished." "Yes, they are," I said. "When?" "The day the judgment came down." The color drained from her face. Leo, who had been lingering awkwardly, finally spoke up. "Chloe, let's not do this here." It was as if she had only just remembered they were in a public place. Heads were starting to turn in their direction. She took a deep, shaky breath, struggling to compose herself. "Come outside with me," she said, looking only at me. "I can't. Not even for 5 minutes. There's no point." She stared at me, her eyes filled with a dawning, unfamiliar look of bewilderment. "Are you really going to be like this? We're living separate lives now." She said nothing else. I took Maya's arm and started to leave. As we passed her, she whispered, "You're going to regret this." I didn't break my stride. Outside, the cool night air hit my face. Maya let go of my arm and looked at me. "Your ex-wife?" "Yeah." "She doesn't seem ready to accept it." "That's her problem." Maya nodded, offering no further comment. Back in the car, she fastened her seatbelt. "You know," she said, "we'll probably have more scenes like that." "I know. Does it bother you?" "No." She glanced at me and smiled. "Good." The car pulled away from the curb, leaving the restaurant behind. And Chloe, still standing in the lobby, watched the taillights of our car disappear into the night. It was only then, I think, that she truly understood. She was home, but I was no longer there waiting. 06 Chloe's call came 3 days later. I was in a meeting at work. The project was at a critical stage, and everyone was on edge. My phone vibrated on the conference table. I glanced at the screen and ignored it. The meeting ended, and I had just gone back to my office when it rang again. It was her. This time, I answered. "Ethan." Her voice was raw with emotion. "Don't you think you owe me an explanation?" I set a stack of files on my desk. My tone was flat. "An explanation for what?" "For getting remarried," she said, practically spitting the words. We've been divorced for 5 minutes, and you're already married to someone else? I leaned back in my chair and said nothing. Her sharp, angry breaths came through the speaker. Are you listening to me? I'm here. Then say something. It's over, Chloe. Over doesn't require an explanation. The line went quiet for a few seconds. My words seemed to have hit a nerve. Over. She let out a cold laugh. Don't you dare act so high and mighty. I took Leo on a trip, and you completely lost it. I frowned. Bringing that up now is pointless. How is it pointless? She shot back, her voice rising. You think I don't know what this is about? You were jealous of him. Chloe, I said, cutting her off. Get to the point. She paused, as if recalibrating. I admit, she said, her pace slowing, that I wasn't considering your feelings. But that's not a reason to end a marriage. Did you have to be so extreme? I looked out the window at the traffic below, refusing to be drawn in by her change of tone. This wasn't about 1 or 2 incidents. Then why didn't you say anything? She retorted immediately. If you don't tell me what's wrong, how am I supposed to know? I let out a quiet breath. I did. When? Every single time you told me to just back down and let it go. She went silent, but it didn't take long for her to recover. I thought those were small things, she said. In a marriage, sometimes you have to compromise. Did you ever? The question hung in the air, and she had no answer for it. I didn't press the issue. Some questions are answers in themselves. After a moment, her voice returned, lower this time. Is this because of her? That woman. This has nothing to do with her. Don't lie to me, she said, her voice laced with bitterness. You wouldn't have moved on this fast without her in the picture. I didn't confirm or deny it. What you're angry about isn't the reason, I told her. It's the result. Her voice suddenly shot up. The result? She echoed, as if I'd said something utterly absurd. Ethan, I am your ex-wife. Ex-wife, I repeated. Those 2 words seemed to make her lose control completely. You think I care about that title? Her voice trembled. I just never thought you'd actually have the guts to leave me. I listened, feeling nothing. You weren't left? I said. You were the one who let go first. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. It was the sound of someone finally realizing this wasn't just another argument. I just took Leo on a trip, she repeated, but the conviction was gone from her voice. Did you really have to say what you said? I knew what she was referring to. What I'd said to her the night she left, the thing that had triggered this whole mess. The final, ugly fight before she stormed out. Why would I keep a car you let someone else joyride into the ground? Am I supposed to stick around and fix it for you? I'd said it in a cold fury. Thinking back on it now, I felt no regret. Chloe, I said, my voice softening slightly but without yielding. You know exactly why I said that. She didn't argue, because she knew it was true. Did you really think I was going to be here waiting when you got back? I continued. The silence on her end stretched on, so long I thought she might have hung up. I thought you would cool down, she finally said. I thought you would see you were wrong. I did see, I told her. I saw everything clearly. And so you just found someone else? I didn't find someone, I corrected her. I started over. She let out a strange, short laugh. Ethan, this isn't you. People change. You changed fast. You just never noticed. My words silenced her completely. I didn't rush to hang up. After a long moment, she asked quietly, doesn't any of this hurt you? Not even a little. I considered it. Not in the way you think. That seemed to be the final blow. Then what was I to you? The past. I said the 2 words with finality. I heard a thud on her end, like something being slammed on a table. Then her voice came back, frantic and unhinged. You will regret this, she said. I swear to God, you will regret this. I didn't reply. She can't possibly know you better than I do, she went on. This is just a rebound for you. Chloe, I interrupted. Let's just stop. Are you afraid to admit it? I don't need to admit anything. She suddenly went quiet. It wasn't a calm silence, but the hollow quiet that comes after an emotional storm. You really don't want me anymore? She whispered. I didn't hesitate. No, the line went dead. She had hung up. I put my phone on my desk, stood up, and walked to the window. The city outside was bright, the traffic a constant, flowing river. I realized the phone call had left no mark on me. No anger, no pity, just a conversation that was finally, truly over. When I got home that night, Maya was in the kitchen, cooking. She heard the door and looked over her shoulder. You're back. Yeah, you look okay. I walked over and took the vegetables she was chopping from her. Chloe called, I said. She didn't miss a beat. What did she have to say? The usual accusations. And what did you say? The truth. She nodded. That's all you can do. At dinner, we didn't mention her name again. Afterward, she sat on the sofa, reading through a prospectus while I answered work emails nearby. The apartment was quiet. A peaceful, solid quiet. After that call, I knew one thing for sure. She finally understood that this wasn't a case of her throwing a tantrum and me apologizing. This time, she was the one who had been left behind. 07 Chloe started appearing in my life. Not by showing up at my door, but through a series of what she clearly wanted me to believe were coincidences. One evening, I saw her at the entrance to my condo building. She was standing under a streetlight, dressed nicely but not ostentatiously, her makeup more subdued than when I'd seen her at the restaurant. "Fancy meeting you here," she said. I paused and looked at her. "How did you know I lived here?" I asked around. She answered quickly, as if she'd rehearsed it. It wasn't hard to find. I didn't respond and continued walking toward the entrance. She fell in a step beside me, deliberately slowing her pace, her tone much softer than before. "Can we go somewhere and talk? It's not a good time. Just for a few minutes," she pleaded. "I promise I won't cause a scene." I stopped. "Chloe, none of this is going to change anything." Her expression faltered for a second before she forced a smile. "I just want to have a real conversation. We already had one." "That didn't count," she said, shaking her head. "You were so cold." I looked at her, then turned and scanned my key fob to enter the building. She stood on the curb, watching me go, and didn't try to follow. The second time was outside my office. I was heading out for lunch with a few colleagues when I saw her car parked across the street. The window rolled down, and she called my name. My colleague stopped, looking from her to me. I didn't break my stride. "You guys go ahead," I told them. Chloe got out of her car and met me on the sidewalk. "I've been waiting for a while. You shouldn't have come here." "Why not?" she challenged. "Afraid someone might see?" "There's no need to create confusion." "Confusion?" She smirked. "Does your new wife know about me?" "She doesn't need to." The words hit her like a slap. Her face tightened. "You've gotten cruel, Ethan." I didn't deny it. "What do you want?" She opened her mouth, but the words she'd clearly prepared seemed to die on her lips. After a few seconds, she said quietly, "I want to start over." I didn't respond. She seemed to take my silence as a sign of hope, and her words came out in a rush. "I know I was wrong," she said. "I took you for granted, and I was unfair. But I can change." "Change what?" "I won't put Leo first anymore," she said quickly. "I've already told him he needs to stand on his own 2 feet. Hearing his name finally got a reaction out of me. "What did you tell him?" "I told him he needs to figure things out for himself," she said, biting her lip. "It's time for him to grow up." She said it so easily, a complete reversal of her old stance. But all I could think was that it was too little, too late. "Chloe, you're only saying these things because you realized I'm not coming back." Her eyes flickered. "That's not true." "It is," I said. "If I were still waiting for you, none of this would be crossing your mind." She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. After that, she stopped coming to my office. But it wasn't over. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Leo. His voice was agitated, stripped of its usual practice softness. "Ethan, can you please talk to Chloe?" I cut him off. "You and I have nothing to talk about." "But she's a wreck," he plowed on, ignoring me. "She's not sleeping, and she's angry all the time. That's her problem. And yours." "You can't be so cold," he snapped. "If you hadn't been so hell-bent on this divorce, none of this would have happened." I laughed. "Leo, what exactly do you want me to do?" He hesitated. "Get back together with her." Even he sounded unconvinced. "She said she's willing to do anything if you'll just take her back." I didn't have to think about it. "Not possible." "Don't be like that," he said, his voice hardening. "Don't you get it? For you, she's finally admitting she was wrong. She's not doing it for me," I said. "She's doing it because she finally found out that not everyone is going to wait around for her forever." The line went silent. I hung up before he could say another word. That night, when I got home, Maya was packing a suitcase. "Business trip?" I asked. "Yeah, just for 2 days. I can take you to the airport." "Don't worry about it," she said, looking up at me. "You've got enough on your plate right now. Don't get distracted." I walked over and helped her close the suitcase. "Has Chloe tried to contact you?" I asked. She paused and met my eyes. "No, if she does, she won't," Maya interrupted, her tone certain. "She won't come to me." I didn't ask why. The day after Maya left, I saw Chloe in the condo parking garage. This time, she wore no makeup. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. She was standing by my car and looked relieved when she saw me. "Can you just listen to me for once?" I didn't immediately say no. We ended up at a coffee shop nearby. She clutched her mug, her knuckles white. "I never thought it would come to this," she said quietly. "I honestly thought you were just angry." I wasn't. "I know it's too late to say anything," she said, looking up at me. "But I have to ask, do you feel anything for me anymore? Anything at all?" She asked the question so carefully. I looked at her, but my mind was calm, empty of any strong emotion. "Not in the way you mean." Her eyes immediately filled with tears. "You were never like this before. You used up the person I was before." The words made her shoulders slump. She looked down, silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was hoarse. "Leo, it's not what you think," she said, as if grasping at a final straw. "He's just family to me. Whether he is or not doesn't matter anymore." "It does matter," she insisted. "If it weren't for him, we wouldn't be in this mess." "Chloe," I cut in, "you can't even convince yourself of that anymore." She stared at me, stunned into silence. I stood up and put some cash on the table. "You don't regret losing me," I said, looking down at her. "You regret losing the one person you were sure would never leave." She didn't try to stop me. When I walked out of the coffee shop, the sky was already dark. In that moment, I knew she was starting to feel regret. But that regret, no matter how heavy it became, would never land on me again. 08 the last time Chloe contacted me was on a rainy evening. I had left work early to pick up Maya from the airport. She just finished her trip and looked tired, but she didn't complain. "Home?" she asked as she got in the car. "Yep." We had just pulled out of the airport parking lot when my phone rang. The screen lit up with Chloe's name. I glanced at it, but didn't answer right away. Maya noticed. She looked over at me. "Yeah." "Answer it," she said, her voice even. "Things that need to end should end cleanly." I nodded, pulled the car over to the curb, and answered the call. Chloe's voice was quiet, completely different from before. "Can you meet me?" I didn't reply immediately. "There's something I need to say to you," she added after a pause. One last time, I looked out at the rain streaking down the windshield. "Where?" She named a restaurant, a place we used to go to often. After I hung up, I put the car back in drive. Maya didn't ask any questions or show any signs of anxiety. "I'll go with you," she said. "You don't have to." "I'll wait in the car," she countered. "You go in alone." I didn't argue. The restaurant was in a quiet neighborhood. When I walked in, Chloe was already at a table by the window. There was an untouched glass of water in front of her. She saw me and immediately stood up. "You came." I nodded and sat down across from her. She had lost weight. Her eyes were weary, and even her makeup seemed carelessly applied. A waiter came by, and I ordered a glass of water. The silence between us was heavy. She rested her hands on the table, her fingers trembling slightly. "I've done a lot of thinking," she began. "I see things clearly now." I waited. "Before, I always just assumed you would be there," she said. "No matter what I did, I thought you would be the one to back down. You mistook my compromise for a guarantee." She gave a bitter smile. "Yes," she admitted. "I understand that now." Rain slid down the window pane, blurring the city lights into abstract streaks. "Leo moved out," she continued. "I found him a place and gave him some money to get started." I showed no reaction. "I'm not trying to trade this for anything," she said, looking up at me. "I just want you to know that I finally understand where I went wrong. It's too late." Her eyes began to well up. "I did care about you," she said, her voice urgent. "I just got so used to you being there. That's not an excuse." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "But can't you give me one more chance?" I looked at her and didn't immediately refuse. She seemed to cling to that slight hesitation, her tone growing more desperate. "We can start over," she said. "I'll listen to you. Whatever you want, whatever kind of life you want to live, I'll do it." "Chloe," I interrupted. "What you're offering isn't a relationship. It's a transaction." She froze. "You're not looking for me," I continued. "You're looking for someone who won't leave." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence stretched on. After a long time, she lowered her head, and her shoulders began to shake. "I just wanted to be the one who mattered more," she whispered. "I didn't want to lose." Hearing that, I knew her mind was completely lost in the past. "You didn't lose," I told her. You just finally ended up in the same place I used to be. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. So, you're really not going to leave me any room at all? I met her gaze without flinching. Some spots, once they're empty, stay empty. All the energy seemed to drain out of her. She slumped back in her chair, her eyes unfocused. I stood up and pushed my chair back into place. We said everything that needs to be said. She didn't try to stop me. When I walked out of the restaurant, the rain was still falling. The wet asphalt glistened under the streetlights. Maya's car was parked right across the street. I got in, and she handed me a tissue. Is it over? It's over. She didn't ask for any more details. She started the car, and we drove away. In the rearview mirror, the lights of the restaurant grew smaller and smaller until they were finally swallowed by the rainy night. Back at our place, Maya went to the kitchen to heat up some soup. I stood in the living room, looking around at the space that was now filled with the traces of two lives, not just one. Everything had its place, a natural, comfortable order. Are you free next week? She called out, carrying 2 bowls. My parents want to meet you. When? Saturday. Okay. She nodded and handed me a bowl of soup. You're not going to ask me how it went? I asked. No need, she said, sitting across from me. I just care about the outcome. I took a sip of the soup. It was the perfect temperature. In that moment, I understood something profound. Some relationships are built on a constant need for reassurance, and others are built simply by walking side by side. Chloe's world was still stuck in the past, searching for answers, but I'd already moved on.